Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 6, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20 until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, which is at the moment Xfinity Channel 8 and 1070, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide a real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Just a brief rundown of tonight's agenda. We have approval of 2 sets of minutes. Then we will move into public announcements and agenda item request. Then we will move forward with public comments on our business agenda, which consists tonight of item A, new fisherman storage area license and use policy and process considerations. And to note, we are going to let public comment happen during that discussion. Item B, FY 2025 budget review, 2024 annual town meeting articles, review and vote. We have our Department of the Public Works and Transfer Station, Sewer, Cemetery, Parks and Grounds, Principal Projects and Operations, Facilities, Snow and Ice, Street Lighting, Fuel Depot, and Operating Budget and Capital Articles. We have Water Operation Budget and Water Capital Articles. If needed, update on Town Manager budget recommendations. And we will finish our evening with a consideration of the policy regarding display of flags on town property. With all that being said, I will start the evening with a roll call. Select Board Member DeCastro.
Present.
Select Board Member Davis.
Present.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Present.
Select Board Member Shell.
Present.
And Select Board Member Metters is present. We will go to approval of minutes. I will start with January 27th, 2024. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Edits, credits, missions. Dean.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, in the third paragraph from the bottom that begins Town Manager Goldsmith, in the second to last line, the phrase "keeping the school open" should be stricken, and the following substituted: pursuing school choice from Harwich to keep the school open. So there was a duplication there, and that's essentially what I said.
Okay. Shreen.
In that same paragraph, I just wanted to note, it said Ms. Davis noted that one of the goals of prior years was to explore regionalization of schools in a broader sense. That isn't what I intended to say. What I intended to say was that our goals were to explore regionalization opportunities in general, not of schools. Thank you.
I missed one, I'm sorry, thank you. In the middle of the page, there's a paragraph Mr. Shell stated, second to last line, Zoning Board of Appeals, should that be Planning Board? Isn't the Planning Board that's doing community outreach?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Okay. Mike.
Yeah, I gave this to Kathy as a typo, but since Dean fussed with that same sentence, I'll give it. I'm not going to correct him. I'm just going to finish, or Kathy can read what I gave you. I think what I said was after the word "but," changing the remainder of the sentence to read offering Chatham Elementary to East Harwich as an option makes sense. It was a little, there were words kind of flying all over that were hard to comprehend, so I just editorialized.
Okay. Anything else? Any correction? Okay. All those in favor? Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Minutes from January 30th, 2024. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, edits, corrections, Mike.
My first one is on page 5, in that first paragraph, under public comments on business agenda, and this is in reference to Mr. Oppenheim's comments. After in the third line, Trust Fund Board of Trustees, I think we need to strike the rest of that sentence and insert, "and is speaking in that capacity." He did say that he was speaking as a board member. Okay. And then on page 6, the George Myers paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line down, Mr. Shell stated, I want to insert after that, "It might be helpful if Mr. Myers were to submit," and strike "needs." And finally, I don't have an editorial suggestion, but I would just say on page 11, and this is certainly understandable, but when I read the paragraph, the second paragraph, she pointed out the capital items. There were requests from both, I mean, this covers both police and fire, and I just thought it would be helpful if we could break that into 2 sentences so we know which is police and which is fire. But I don't have a specific suggestion.
Jeff?
Thank you, Corey. On the same page, page 11, middle of the page, there's just a dangling sentence there. It starts with body-worn cameras and portable radios at the police station are, and it doesn't go anywhere. And we talk about body-worn cameras and portable radios elsewhere in the body of the minutes. And then on page 14, child care voucher program, very bottom of the page, this program is a request for $125,000 that services toddlers through 21 years old. That is not,
I
that's not,
stumbled on that myself.
it can't be 21 toddlers through 21, that's a large toddler.
All right. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several, starting on page 3. Two-thirds of the way down, Mr. Nacastro added, I want to insert the following after my name, adopted and added to the request of Mr. Messina and so forth. And in the second line, I would strike everything that begins "to review" down to the word "development," because that's not what I inserted. And I would substitute for that simply the word "for." So it would say, "would like an agenda item for Select Board review." Then on page 5, I'm sorry, on page 4, again, two-thirds of the way down, the paragraph that begins with my name in the second line, toward the end, Town Council Costello, I would insert "agreed and noted." Agreed and noted. On the next,
I'm sorry, Dean,
sorry.
I'm having a hard time catching up with you. Where was that? Page 4.
page 4, the paragraph two-thirds of the way down that begins, Mr. Nacastro noted.
Oh, okay.
The second line, the next sentence, Town Council Costello agreed and noted. Next page, under item 4, third paragraph down, with Elaine Gibbs, and I did hear from Ms. Gibbs this afternoon. Second line, at the end, I would insert "objects to," and strike the word "once," 60 units in that he is opposed to high density. That was the language she asked me to consider. So objects to 60 units in that he is opposed to high density on the property. Then on page 9, now this is a little more extensive. Second full paragraph, which begins, "It was stated that this is a legal issue." In the fourth line, and where it says an abutter has a conflict of interest, I would insert an abutter has a presumption of conflict of interest. And at the end of that sentence, I would strike the word bylaw, and I would insert according to the State Ethics Commission. And then in the next line, 2/3 of the way in, where it says but rather, I would strike the comma, strike the word encourage, and I would insert but rather require that he, and I would strike the word recuse himself from, and I would insert not participate as a trustee in the matter, singular. So, but rather require that he not participate as a trustee in the matter. Then I would insert this sentence, because I think it reflects the conversation. Mr. Levitt's longstanding interest in and advocacy for housing, which predated the town's acquisition of the Buckley property, was noted. That's the point I made. Mr. Levitt's longstanding interest in and advocacy for housing, which predated the town's acquisition of the Buckley property, was noted. Then on page 11, up at the top, I think there's just a duplication in the second line of the phrase "for public safety." It's repeated. On page 12, up at the top, very first line on the police department, and I would insert "with certain exceptions in the area of non-sworn personnel." With certain exceptions in the area of non-sworn personnel.
I'm
On
sorry,
page
where was that again? I'm sorry.
right up at the top, Kathy, first line after the phrase "on the police department."
My pagination might be off, so what is the start, the cost is
it's-
estimated at? Is that the sentence?
The cost is estimated at $150,000, and that would be enough to cover body areas for everyone on the police department. And I would just insert that phrase at the end of that sentence. Would you like me to repeat it? With certain exceptions in the area of non-sworn personnel. Next page, under the review of articles, fixing salaries for elected officials, second sentence, Mr. Nacastro, I would insert on behalf of all board members, on behalf of all board members, declare that there is an interest in this item and by motion, declared to invoke the rule of necessity. And I have only two more, sorry. Well, I'm sorry, I think I just have one more. Yes, on page 18. Second to last line at the bottom. I would strike the word total at the beginning. Just say number of connections already completed and insert, and the grand total. Okay? Thank you. Appreciate your indulgence. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Any additional edits? All right. All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro,
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens,
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell,
Aye.
and Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right. Public announcements and agenda item requests. Anything from the board? No, no, no. All right. I have one on behalf of Chatham TV. Bear with me a second. Notice, Chatham TV, local government access, is leaving Comcast Channel 8 and 1070. On February 14th, 2024, Chatham TV will no longer be available on Comcast channels 8 and 1070. Beginning February 14th, Chatham TV will move to high-definition channel 1072. Live meetings and bulletin board postings will be broadcast on Comcast channel 1072 in high definition. Live meetings will continue to be available for viewing on the town's website and the Chatham TV YouTube channel. So we have another shift in our TV system.
Corey, I do have one.
Please.
I got a letter from Dave Wilbur about the drainage on Morris Island Road, so I just want to make sure we follow up. So I just want to place it as an agenda item for Mr. Faley and others to follow up. We know what the issue is, but I think it's important that we get on the agenda just to make sure we follow up. Thanks.
Fair enough. All right. Any public announcements or agenda item requests from the public in-house tonight? Yes. Yep, just go up to the, yep. On the agenda item, it's not quite yet. If it's, yep, we have a public announcement, agenda item request, and we will get public comments in a moment. Nope, thank you for that. All right, so any public announcements or agenda item requests from the online audience?
No.
No? Okay. So public comment on our business agenda. Now is the perfect.
Hi, Bob Lear, 296 Main Street. Short comment on the part of the capital budget related to ADA accessibility. I'm speaking on behalf of the Town Committee for People with Disabilities, expressing our frustration over the lack of progress in implementing the ADA accessibility recommendations in the independent report to the town prepared by the Institute for Human-Centered Design. A little bit of background. In May 2019, the committee learned that the IHCD had prepared a comprehensive report for Harwich, which seemed appropriate for Chatham's needs. We were advised that a grant would be needed to pay for such a survey, which was applied for in September 2019, resulting in a report which was presented to the town in June 2021. In August 2022, the committee was advised that a lack of funding was a major obstacle to implementing the report's recommendations. In the fall of 2022, the Select Board included compliance with ADA in its priorities for the FY24 budget. That led to a provision in the proposed 5-year capital plan, which included $250,000 per year for ADA compliance, which was approved by the annual town meeting in May 2023. The committee was optimistic at that time that this commitment would result in substantial progress. However, since then, the committee has not been made aware of any action to ensure compliance other than plans to develop plans for external access and physical changes to facilities. The self-evaluation summary of the report contains many recommendations of administrative nature, like training, which were not included in the capital program. The committee has not been advised of any activities which have been undertaken to address these elements. Nonetheless, the proposed budget appears to reduce the ADA allocation to $200,000 for fiscal year 25. After some discussion or extended discussion, the committee's recommendation is that the town needs to identify and staff a position for which a primary function is to oversee implementation of ADA compliance. We are requesting this because the current designated ADA coordinator is also the building commissioner, zoning enforcement office, and floodplain administrator. The principal projects and operations administrator is apparently in charge of all major capital facility improvements, but has no direct jurisdiction over many other aspects of ADA compliance. Moreover, as you know, each of these managers have full-time responsibilities which impact literally every facet of town activities. We are cognizant of budget concerns. However, additional emphasis is warranted here for at least 2 reasons. First, providing reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities is legally required by both the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1991. And secondly, and perhaps more practically important, all of our citizens and visitors would benefit from the required improvements to achieve accessibility for all, and especially a majority of those who are elderly and/or mobility or sensory impaired. The Committee is anxious to encourage the town to fulfill its legal responsibilities and improve access to services and facilities for all residents. We would like to meet and discuss reasonably appropriate means with staff to achieve that result. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments on the agenda item for in-house? Is there anyone online? Gibbs?
Yes, Ms. Gibbs.
Elaine, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Elaine Gibbs, Chatham. Yes, this is about agenda item
Elaine,
B.
you can go, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Yes, this is about agenda item B on the Public Works presentation. I had watched it at the Finance Committee today, and one of the charts was a debt graph, but it only showed existing debt and showing it dropping off. I believe that debt graph should show the impact of funds that we have already appropriated but not yet spent. And this was for a period of 5 years, FY 25 to 30. So we have appropriated funds, but we do recognize that it won't show up in the debt until the money's actually borrowed. So I believe that the graph should show that, and that I think it should also include the debt impact if all of the staff recommendations for spending in FY 25 are approved. That will give us an indication of, how much debt we're going to have. And I think also that what should be included is if all the spending that we have approved and will approve during that period of time go through, what the impact is going to be on the tax levy. Because right now it's $3.57, but obviously with all that spending that's going to kick in within the next 5 years, it's going to be a lot higher. And I would hope that every department has a debt graph showing that based on their spending this year, as well as the total town budget. So that again, before it goes, for approval on the warrant, that we can see how much debt we're going to accrue based on the appropriated and spending that you guys have approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Is there anyone else online who has a comment on our business agenda? All right, moving on. Item A, new fisherman storage area license and use policy and process considerations, and to note, public comment will be accepted during this agenda item, so. Good evening.
Hello, Greg Berman, Natural Resources. So we have gotten the results of the survey in. We had 19 respondents, and while it's not a huge number, it's a huge interest. We have significant, we have more than double the requests than we have capacity. So I think some decisions will have to be made about, priority and what the select board would like to do moving forward. The survey also included what folks would like to store there. So there were some things such as boats, dinghies that, should be discussed that may not have been used in the past. But basically, we have our 5 questions that the select board could consider. And I'm not sure if you would like me to go through, staff thoughts on each one of those, or this will be a chance for you folks to discuss before hearing that.
No, share your thoughts.
Very good. So the first question is if the storage space should be limited to Chatham residents. And it's staff opinion that with the significant interest within just the residents, there's much more interest than there is capacity. So that would be a nice way to winnow it down, is just to have Chatham residents involved. Moving on to the Chatham docking permit and mooring permit, if it's limited to those individuals, that would also take care of any residency requirement, because the harbor master does have residency versus non-resident on those permits. So it can simply be defined like that. If the select board would like it to be for Chatham residents with those permits, it's kind of built in for that aspect of it. And then if any type of gear should be given priority. I did mention boats probably are not appropriate for this type of storage unit. And we did have some concern with the gill nets involved, but I think if proper care is taken, putting them in vats or fish boxes, things like that, to prevent wildlife from getting entangled, we could still have those types of gear provided. And then really the selection process moving forward. So we have some existing leaseholders. We have, a wide range of interest. So at this point, it's whether you would like to have priority assigned to existing leaseholders, and then kind of thinking about what square footage would be allotted to each leaseholder. If the existing leaseholders each had the option to take, one entire bay, that's all of the capacity already, and nobody else gets anything. So we were, sort of considering that if you wanted to provide some larger bays for some of the potential tenants, and then cut one of the bays into smaller units. It looks like there's several folks looking for between 1,000 and 500 square feet. So basically, we're asking for some guidance in regard to this and what level you would like moving forward. Whether you would like regulations drafted for your review or just input provided to us at this stage.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm going to share some thoughts, but this is not a new topic for us. This has come before us at various different levels and stages over the last couple of years. So going back a little background, there was an existing fisherman's storage area on the airport property for a considerable amount of time. And let's just say the oversight and maintenance of it could have been better. So that had a long history. Determination was made that type of use of the property was going to stop. So we went into the first kind of discussion with the board is, well, should we consider even offering a temporary storage area for the fishermen who had been using this town site, who were interested? So that was one step in this process. So certain people who had been using the facility at the airport side were not interested. We're not seeking, to continue it. And when everything's said and done, we had a smaller group who were interested in an alternative town facility if it still came available. So those who stepped forward and kind of showed that interest at that stage, we worked out an agreement to use the wastewater treatment facility and created a temporary fisherman's storage area that was limited. It was utilized by mostly residents. I believe there was only one non-resident who actually became one of the temporary leaseholders at the facility. Next step was, well, do we want to get a permanent fisherman's storage area? And decision was made to craft up an article for town meeting. It went before for funding, the size, et cetera, et cetera. And lo and behold, town meeting supported the funds to be executed. A new facility was made off of Middle Road, kind of just adjacent to the transfer station. And it was built with some flexibility. There's these cement dividers that you can play around a little bit. It's not going to have a 19-tenant capacity. That is clear. So we're kind of putting ourselves in a little bit of a pickle. I do feel to some degree we have a obligation to, I know there's probably some legal limitations of what we can do, but from a moral perspective, those who stepped forward from the very, very beginning and showed interest in it and worked through the process of the airport facility to the temporary facility, who really wanted to get the confirmation of the new facility, they've been through this process since day one. And it's a number that was compatible with the square footage of the new facility. So those who had it, I think we could fill that. Now, then the question is, well, there's so much interest. does the town want to make another facility? My guess is probably not, but that's, all of my fellow board members weigh in, because, how much more do we create? I do agree, looking at the inventory of gear and stuff, boats, I think would automatically disqualify. We start turning into a boat storage, it would be competing against other boat yards and other facilities, but I think that is an easy thing that we want to eliminate. I don't think we want to offer boat storage, respectfully for the one person on the list that identified that. I do think residents' preference also is a reasonable consideration. Taxpayers put this forth, paid for it, built it. I do think that is a reasonable request. So I guess we're going to struggle a little bit of who is going to ultimately get these spaces, but I do think we, to the best of my, at least I would support, to the best of our ability, those who were in the process from the beginning, because this has been a kind of a lengthy discussion, a lengthy process, that I think we're going to recognize that they expressed interest from the beginning, and to the best of our ability of those who have been in the process, if we can accommodate them for that location, I think it would be morally beneficial to us. Now, another question that I think we could discuss is those who have this gear, who have not used the temporary site or existing sites, maybe verification of do they would have alternative sites to store it if they did not have access to a town facility. Because there's I think maybe Jeff and Shereen have a little more history with the fisherman industry, that can weigh in, is some of the beginning of the fisherman storage area from years back is to try to eliminate some of the gear that was being stored in residential areas, neighborhood centers, that neighbors may or may not like seeing or viewing or having to, be a neighbor of. I think the community's been very supportive of fishing gear in general, and I think we've been very appropriate in how we've handled that. But if the displaced tenants that are now at the temporary site, if they're not able to go into a permanent site, I don't know how many, and I guess we'd have to maybe do a little more questioning, how much of that gear would then turn back into the residential areas, and then do we start another conversation of a review? So that's a whole bunch of thoughts I just want to throw out there. I'm going to open up to the board for thoughts, because I think this is going to be a little bit more of a lengthier discussion. I don't think it's really very cut and dry. So, Shereen?
I think we can work through the process, Corey. I think it's just a question of clarification and better understanding and needs-based. So I don't want to make this be a really big issue. We've got a couple of people, fishermen in the room. They probably could give us their perspective on the site and needs. I think it would be helpful to inform the board if any one of you want to come up and just give an example or just say what your needs are for that area, whether you're already using it or not. I believe this should be a resident-only program. I think that if another town wants to support commercial fishing, they can put a storage area for those folks there too, for their taxpayers. But I'd really like to, if does anyone want to get up and say anything? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No.
Yeah, no, Jason, I want to hear your perspective, because, there's a lot out there, and I think it's helpful.
Jason Hyora, Chatham Lobsterman. Honestly, Corey just laid it out, impeccably, in my opinion. So, there's not a lot. It would just be a lot of repetitive. But, the point that we have been through the whole process at the temporary site, of course, not promised any guarantees or anything for the new site. We just feel that how he explained it is my feelings, and I believe some of the other guys too, that, we just feel like we should have at least first dibs, but I don't know how that works with the legalities of it, so.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Some of I'm pretty supportive of the people that are already existing into the system, stay in the system, and then the rest go out. I don't know how many spaces, we only have 5? 3? So that pretty much does it, right?
It's three bigger well, kind of 1, 2, and 3. The cement dividers do have some flexibility that we could move it into maybe 4, 5, 6, maybe, but it's certainly not 10, 15, 19. I mean, it's not even close to that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see the breakout here. There's one person requesting a full bin, but the rest of them are broken down into about 15 to 1,000 square feet.
Actually, there were a couple that just said as much as possible, so it's difficult to determine whether that would be a full bin or not. And yeah, there's 3 plots available, 5,640 square feet. So we can rearrange it to some degree. It's just how we want to break it up.
Oh, here's a question, because we see the listing of, person A wants this much, person B. Do you have the data that says the existing, or those who are using the temporary site, how they responded for square footage, how that square footage equates to the current, or the newly built facility? Would their need request fit into that in a whole, or are we over capacity, are we under capacity?
I don't have the number.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that got captured in the survey or whether it was fully anonymous. But
It's anonymous to
very-
us, but I don't know who is what, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. I assume that the folks that have been with us all along, the fishermen that have been all along are residents.
All but one, I believe.
Well, then you've got a problem there.
Yep.
And then, and this lineup on page 3 here, it says 2 full bin at 5,600, the 2 requests for a full bin at 5,640,
So those were the ones that had, sorry, let me just pull it up here. Yes,
So there's
2
been
full bins at
2
that.
full bins requested, 2 at 5,000 for a non-resident. But I mean, I'm just trying to total up the requested square feet for residents only, is what I'm trying to do.
26,965, if we assume that the as much as possibles were an entire bin.
What if you take out the non-residents?
That was
I did, yeah.
taking
Oh,
out
it was,
non-residents,
okay,
that's just
sorry,
residents.
So, I'm sorry, Greg, but 26,965, how'd you get that number? That's the total, you added up all those? Okay.
Yes,
All
yeah,
right.
just
And there's
separating out.
16,920 feet available, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Sorry, I just ran these numbers this afternoon, I would have put it in the
yeah.
packet.
So if you just multiply 5,640 times 3, you get 16,920. So you're approximately 10,000 square feet of demand over availability. So you gotta
For everyone on the list?
no, just for residents.
Okay,
If I just added up the residents, at least
Okay.
it's 26,965.
Understood. Which kind of goes to my previous question. If we had a better understanding, if we were to give preference to the existing entities, and we had preference to residents, which unfortunately eliminates one of the individuals, as far as my information is correct, if we plug in the square footage that each of them are requesting, how does that fill the capacity? I guess that's a data point we don't
I
have.
believe we did ask that in email, I'm not sure the response.
I do have it, I just looked up 3 of the 4 current
Yep,
submitted to the form.
okay,
2 of them are requesting a full bin,
okay.
and 1 is requesting 5,000 square feet.
2 full,
So,
1, 5.
Almost 3 full bins, basically.
And Kathy, those are resident way to identify that?
And I can't say for sure, but I've heard, as far as residency, that you may need to make the call whether it's a resident, as in they live in town, or they pay taxes on property in town. One of the folks may be in that situation.
Yep,
Okay,
Yes, all 3 are residents.
okay.
And just off the top of my head, for a process, if we have folks that, we have too much demand, not enough space, so when we get the actual square footage of what is demanded by residents, and they all want, 5,600, you gotta do a lottery at some point, you have to give it out to chance. I mean, you're just gonna have to do something like that, Corey. You go. So you've got 4 people or 3 people that want 5,640 space, square feet, then at some point you just gotta say, okay, we're gonna, do a lottery. Put 3 numbers in a hat and pick a number and, if you meet all, other than that, you're gonna be oversold. You're not gonna be able to, what kind of fair way you're gonna allocate the space for?
Well, to respond to that element is I feel a little bit, I think we do need to recognize those who have been part of the process for the last couple of years.
I'm saying
Yep,
you
yep.
got 16,920 square feet. Deduct from that those folks that have been grandfathered in, if you will, you're grandfathering those folks in.
Okay.
Other than the non-resident. You gotta be consistent.
No, I understand, yep.
I mean, we can discuss it. If you get to be consistent, you gotta, I mean, if that person's been with us all along, then you gotta say, well, non-residents are okay. But assuming that, so get your net number from satisfying your grandfathered folks and then come up with some fair and equitable way to allocate the rest of the space based on, number one, they gotta be a resident, and number two, if they all want, the folks remaining still want X amount of space, then at some point you gotta run a lottery.
All right, Mike.
I just have a question.
Yep.
If I understand what Jeff is saying and what Kathy just gave us, basically you're almost done with what's available if you give priority to the 3 people who are residents and have been with us all along. Is that?
Correct,
is that
because you got
I
2
mean,
at
it's-
2 at
it's
full
2
bins,
at full and 1 at 5,000.
5,000, so you're 15,640
There's virtually nothing left.
essentially.
Okay, I just.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not
you're
gonna
correct.
Chime in on the merits here. I just want to understand the numbers.
You're correct, Dean.
Well, I was going to say the same thing, but I wanted to add, isn't one of those 3, from what Kathy was saying, or what Greg was saying, someone who is not a citizen of Chatham but pays property taxes?
No, I believe the 3 that are identified were residents, like actually resident living in Chatham. And then Greg mentioned there's another party that
And I
is
misunderstood.
not a resident who resides in Chatham, but does have own property. So
Pays
that, he was
taxes,
asking
yes.
about the definition of resident.
And that would be a 4th.
That would be a
In
4th?
addition to that
Okay.
3.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Shreen, yeah.
So if we just kept this to the existing leaseholders
Mm-hmm.
and put them into this program and then looked at need, going down the road,
Mm-hmm.
looking at waterfront, working waterfront funding
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to expand that might be the most easiest solution in my mind.
I would be comfortable with that, because I think we certainly did not guarantee anyone, but I think we implied working with the process, the temporary facility. So I think from a moral perspective, I think that would be appropriate, and keeping the door open for the now, which is a broader need than was expressed, say, a year or so ago, for opportunities, I think would be wise of us to have that open perspective. So I would be,
We've already set the precedent of what could be at the sewer treatment plant, what kind of equipment could be there, so that's already decided for us.
Yep.
And then if we just don't overthink this and look at what the potential is for expansion and fund, what that kind of funding would look like,
Yep.
that's something for down the road. We're not disrupting, folks at this point, and we're not making any promises to anybody else at this point as well. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, and then as far as crafting any type of, documentation, how would it be, what would be the timetable process from town management?
I don't think the documentation is going to take that long because it's a license agreement. It's just a matter of having the site logistics set up, so we have how to enter the property and so forth. But I don't think that's going to take long. I think the current license agreements expire on June 30th.
Okay.
And so one of the reasons why, there was a need to have this program tonight or soon is to make sure we can get the directions from the select board and then prepare for the occupancy per se.
So would it be reasonable to try to execute this sooner than later, no rush, to allow any gear that is at the temporary site to be transitioned to the permanent site, so the ultimate goal is to kind of clear the temporary site sooner than later?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's just that we talked on a staff level about how we're going to monitor or how the people can access the parcel so that it's safe, it's secured, and that won't take very long. After tonight's, I think we could put this in action as soon as the board gives us direction.
All right. Mike?
This may be a moot question, academic or silly, but, and it's a license, so this may not be the proper term, but I presume that folks can't either sublet or assign these licenses. I mean, they couldn't sublet part of, or could they? I just want to be clear about that.
It would be a no unless the board would authorize that.
So they'd
but
have to come back to us, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to summarize, where are we?
Well, it looks like we're giving preference to existing temporary lease holders or tenants. I identified 3 that responded, all qualify as residents, full-time residents. They've determined the square footage that would fill our capacity, and then we, obviously keep our options open for further, options, and yes.
And I'd have to say, if they did not need that capacity, they need to let us know so that we could open up more
someone
space for
else.
somebody else. Especially since, and do it in a way that's not just, well, I'm saving it for maybe, but, looking real hard and saying, do I need all this space, or can I do this with less, and let's offer back to the town?
And I don't think it's unreasonable for us as anyone using the site that we kind of monitor things to make sure things are done, reasonably maintained. And if there's a clear visual, they're only using half the capacity and it's just not being used, then I think we have to call them on that. I think they're going to use all the capacity, I do. But I think we have a reasonable oversight of how the plots are being used, so. Mike?
Just one last question. If that one person takes only 5,000 square feet, that leaves notionally 640 square feet. Do we have the capacity and do we have an interest in trying to subdivide in a way to accommodate and use those 640 square feet?
Well, the question is probably access, because the way the site is built now, I'll agree for more clarification. You kind of drive into the site, 1 bay, 2 bay, and then the 3rd bay kind of is that back third of the property, so you have that lane to access it. So you got to determine if the layout is adequate, or if you're going to adjust the cement, dividers a little bit to be more user-friendly.
Yeah, I mean, I could feasibly see a way to do it. Also, this was a fairly tentative email. The person may have responded 5,000 when they thought that was the entire square footage. So maybe if we go back, they actually want the whole bin.
Okay. Or vice versa, they want a little bit less,
Yeah.
and we can whittle someone a fourth person.
Exactly. So after we get,
I think this is the
firm numbers.
I think this is a good path forward.
Is there going to be any kind of regulation over the gear that's going to be stored? Because you have a long list here, you talked about it earlier.
I think similar
we
to
gonna
what was
deal
at
with
the
that?
temporary site. I think whatever, as Shereen mentioned, we've already kind of determined what was used at the temporary site. So we'll stay consistent with our policy on the temporary site, and we'll just carry it over to the new facility.
I also have to say there might be room for, having lived with this in my life, no broken or abandoned equipment, like, like, oh, there's a little piece here that I could maybe use down the road. I'm still dealing with that in my world. But I think no boats, no dinghies, and this is strictly equipment. It sounds like the pot fishermen need the space.
Right.
And they're the most impacting of residents seeing a bunch of, some people are set in the woods and they can go ahead and, put all their gear in there and their boats and everything. But if you live in a neighborhood, sometimes it's, people don't really want to see a bunch of gear. I'd be very careful of anything containing any hydraulic fluid. We went through this before.
Yeah.
Even though this is all cement, I think we need to make sure everything is contained, and it just, that it doesn't become a junk heap like the last time.
I think there's some language in the license agreement currently that may control what goes there and what's not, what doesn't go there, that could perhaps be expanded upon.
Definitely, yes, we just need to review it again.
Jeff?
Just want to emphasize, I thought the notion of having a gill net and a fish tote, and the last one, if you're stacking them, the last one, the top covered, so varmints can't get in and we don't impact any kind of wildlife, is a very good suggestion.
Can we offer a motion?
Please.
I think it will say that we are, I move that we approve the issuance of 3 licenses for the fisherman's storage area to be issued to the 3 resident existing temporary fisherman's storage licensees, and that we restrict or that we add to the list of not to be stored boats and dinghies, and that any use of storage for gill nets or any kind of nets, that they be contained in vats with tops and covers.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
The fact is that I think if this is an in-demand issue, we should look at opportunity where we might be able to find some funding and expand this program. Oh, no hydraulics in that motion, too.
Second to that?
Second.
All right. We have a motion, we have a second. Unless there's any further discussion, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. FY 2025 Budget Review, 2024 Annual Town Meeting Article Review Vote. Department of Public Works.
Hi, good evening. Carrie Mazzarola, Finance Director. Tonight's budget presentation will focus on Public Works and Water Department. The Public Works makes up 15% of the operating budget, is presented at $7.339 million for 2025, with an increase of $313,518 over the current operating budget. The Water Operating Department is proposed at $4.4 million, an increase of $485,680 over the current budget. Rob Faley and Terry Whalen are both here to provide more details of the Public Works budget, and this is also included in the digital budget book. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Select Board members. Bear with me for a moment, please. Okay, I'm here to present the Public Works budget for FY25. Just a quick review. Department of Public Works is comprised of 7 different divisions: municipal buildings, highways, transfer station, cemeteries, parks and grounds, and water and sewer. Our staff is made up of the equivalent of 43 full-time employees. Administration is the director, deputy director, 3 admins in the office. Highways has 7 full-time employees. Transfer station, 8 full-time and 1 part-time employees. Facilities, 3 full-time employees. Parks and grounds, 7 full-time employees. Cemetery, 1 full-time employee. And water and sewer are with Weston and Sampson Contracted Services. That's why they're grayed out, so they're technically not town employees, but they still report up through the Department of Public Works. We added 3.5 staff in FY24, which we were very appreciative of, but we still carry 3 vacancies. We're just having some struggles hiring people, and kind of a revolving door. So we're hopefully going to be fully staffed here in the near future. Vehicles and equipment. Administration, we have 2 pickup trucks. The deputy director and the director have pickup trucks that are offered for take-home. We seldom take them home. Based on operating needs of the department, we will take them home. Highways, does the select board wish me to go through all this? Is that Is that okay? I mean, is it not needed? I'm at your, demand here. You're good? Okay. I'll take that as a,
You're okay.
okay. I just do want to point out the gray contracted vehicles are part of the operational services of water and sewer. The only vehicle the town owns is the Vector truck. That's why that's the darker color. And here's a breakdown by percentage of the makeup of the DPW budget, starting at 12 o'clock and going clockwise, Municipal buildings is 23%, highways 12, and so on. It shows the breakdown. The largest portion is basically buildings, transfer station, and the sewer department are the three largest of DPW. So, as Carrie mentioned, we're proposing a budget of $7,338,858.50, which an increase of $313, $518, or 4.46%. Different this year, we're breaking out project administration. Terry Whalen is here. He'll give a brief overview of that. That's $221,400. So project administration is still part of the DPW budget, but it's separated from municipal buildings. And just to break down below, personnel increases are up $115,000. Operational increases are up $198,000. And here's just the breakdown of the personnel increases. Most of these are a result of increases for collective bargaining and longevity bonuses. You'll see that cemetery and parks and grounds have actually a reduction, and that's due to longer-term employees leaving, and we're replacing them with newer staff with typically a lower salary. And I'm happy to break at any point for questions, but I'll keep going in the meantime. Operational increases, you're going to see a common theme here. We show a picture of a uniform. Uniform increases across the board. They've gone up 26% over the past 2 years. So, even though municipal buildings and highways, all the other categories are level funded, we did have an increase in uniform costs. Sewer costs are contracted services. The Weston and Sampson contract expires at the end of this coming June. We are preparing an RFP to go out, but preliminary discussions with some of the interested parties indicate that we'll have an increase in costs due to that, partially due to the expanded sewer work that we're doing in town with more pump stations and the like, but also partly because salaries have increased substantially over the past few years. And we were able to reduce electricity by $10,000. Transfer station is a little bit more of a moving target. Again, uniforms is consistent. CMAS, which is the waste-to-energy facility, the tipping fees, we have a 5-year contract with them. Tipping fees typically increase 3% every year, but their contract also expires December 31st, 2024. So we anticipate there will be some increases there as well. CMAS Trucking, that's a private hauler that we hire to bring our waste material to CMAS facility. That's increased over time. Typically, every truck that goes to CMAS is a $550 rate, not including any wait times they may face when they get there. Recyclable material removal has decreased $23,000, so the new number is $320,000. And I credit Transfer Station Foreman Dave Lusher for his actions in trying to find reductions and new contracts. When costs become exorbitant, he explores different vendors that can provide a lower cost service. So he's been really helpful with that. Same thing with the operational supplies decrease. He's been instrumental in carrying that forward as well.
Dean, you have a question?
Thank you, Corey. Rob, just on this second item, the CMAS tipping increase. So I do remember when we got into this about 4+ years ago, the increase was pretty steep. Do you anticipate something in that order next fall?
It's hard to predict, but I would anticipate it's harder and harder to get rid of garbage all across, not only just the Northeast, but across the country. So I would anticipate there would be some jump in costs.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, if I might, is there any alternative to CMAS?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thanks.
Maybe Maine, but then the trucking costs will be more exorbitant. Parks and Grounds, again, uniforms. Some of the vehicle and equipment maintenance increases are due to basically lawnmower maintenance parts, tires, blades, belts, those sort of things. They've all increased in price. And the Buildings and Grounds maintenance is increased, $13,500. A lot of that is due to the glyphosate voluntary reduction, which is basically the active ingredient in Roundup. It's harder and harder for us to weed control. I mean, we've seen the issues with some of the ball fields that we've been struggling with the last couple of years. It just takes more maintenance power to try to remedy some of that stuff. And cemeteries, the Building and Grounds maintenance increased by $20,000. That's to have contracted mowers at Union and Seaside cemeteries.
I should just have a quick question. When we talk about, the grounds, especially like the ball fields and stuff, are we gonna, I just forget how I want to phrase this. There were some concerns last year, because certain fields may have not have been utilized so much, so I don't think there was as much focus on them, and they kind of overgrew a little bit. Are we gonna change the scheduling of how we maintain any of the ball fields? Do we have enough staff to do it on what is a ideal schedule? Are we gonna have those same questions coming back, basically, I want to ask?
We are going to do our best.
Okay.
So now that we have, we know what the schedules will be, we have a really good communication with our Parks and Rec departments. We are focusing on getting those ball fields prepared. I believe the schools are also going to contract around beginning of July with some of their maintenance services. So we'll still handle the ball fields, but it may relieve some of our staff to handle some of this stuff and be more on top of it.
Good, thank you.
Snow and ice, street lighting, central fuel depot, all level funded. And again, projects administration, Terry's here to talk about that when I'm
Dean, you got a
finished.
question?
Yeah, I don't know if this is for Rob or Carrie, or Jill, actually. The snow and ice, so 95,000, I know you can deficit spend on that under state law. What happens if you don't use the full 95? Does that roll over, or does it just go back into the general fund?
Yeah, so it will close out at the end of the year to the
So
general
you'd
fund.
have to
and it will become
reappropriate.
free. Yeah, free cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Water Department, you'll see in the orange column is FY '24 voted. In the green column is proposed for this year. Water fund salaries, there have been some slight increases. Water fund expenses have actually gone down a little bit. Same as the sewer, we're expecting the operational services to go up, but we were able to find some other efficiencies within the department's budget. So we think it'll be more or less level funded, even with those increases. Overhead, slight increases, and debt service. I'll show you the next slide, and I think this is what Ms. Gibbs was referring to. So 2024, it shows debt of a little over 1.03 million. FY '25, it's 1.59 million. That's current debt. We have wells 10 and 11, and then wells 5 and 8 are starting up. So it's expected that climbing from 24 to 25 will probably continue on that same trajectory or something similar, rather than declining in 26, as we take out more debt to pay for some of those water infrastructure projects. And if you have any questions, I'm going to ask Carrie to step back up here.
Any questions at the moment? Mike?
Are we going to hear from Terry? Well, let me just, whether it's Terry or you, I would like to ask you to address as best you can some of the questions and comments that Mr. Lear brought up in his comments on the ADA projects, the reduction in the budget. And I do appreciate that those projects are spread all around town into different areas. But if you could do the best you could to at least address some of those concerns that he expressed, that would be welcome.
Sure. So, yeah, I think that, Terry, is that part of your budget discussion? I mean, I'm only about a third of the way through, so so forgive me. I'm going to jump into capital articles next, but if now's a good time to pause.
Jeff, did you have a question?
I just was going to make the comment that I'm pretty sure Carrie will at some point show a debt schedule that also evidences the amount of debt that we've taken on that we haven't used yet. So what our overall debt what we've undertaken, but we haven't spent yet. I know we see that every year, and I think that's where Ms. Gibbs was driving earlier, right? It wasn't necessarily about the water department, but might have been, but.
I was going to add that. We have seen those slides in the past. Alex used to present them when we were looking at the broad category of debt. And for example, when we were considering the senior center, or Center for Active Living, she would project out what was already appropriated but not yet.
Exactly, and Carrie will do the same.
Yeah, I'm sure she can.
It's just a timing issue,
Yeah,
right?
I will. I will definitely provide all that
Yeah, I think,
information for
I
you.
think that's,
Not a problem.
that's what we're talking about.
Yep,
Great,
I understand.
thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So that concludes the operational and personnel portion of it. So I'll jump on to capital budget requests. A lot of this is annual requests, so I won't spend a lot of time on it unless you folks have some questions. $10,000 for annual cemetery headstone cleaning. Annual requests just to make our cemeteries more beautiful. We recently had a CPC grant that went out. John Fougere is addressing about 107 headstones at Seaside Cemetery. So it's repair, cleaning, that sort of thing. So it's really going to be a nice way for people as they enter into Seaside Cemetery to see some of those improvements, and we just hope to project some of that further and expand the cleaning effort. Water main service replacements, $10,000, again, annual request. Replacement of old, unlined, and undersized water service pipes. We are undergoing a study. Weston and Sampson is looking at, it's kind of an EPA-driven study. It's mandated, and we have to have a game plan together in order by October of this year. So that's being undertaken now. A lot of research, a lot of pulling the old card files out and seeing what kind of pipes were installed years ago. So we're trying to get that and get an inventory together and then get a plan for addressing all of those pipes so it doesn't leach into the water. Another annual request, $10,000 for bike trail maintenance. This was a recent fence replacement that we were able to install. About a $16,000 privacy fence on the bike path. It was rotted, it was repaired numerous times, and the wind just had its way with it. So we beefed it up, we put in a much more robust fence, and this funding helps us support some of those efforts. Stump grinder, a $55,000 capital request. This piece of equipment is a Toro Dingo. It looks menacing, but it's actually just a small walk-behind piece of equipment. It comes with a bucket, but we would buy a stump grinder attachment for it. It would help us address some of the smaller trees that we take down, especially in cemeteries. This machine is small enough to go between the headstones and do that. And we can also do it on roadsides. And any place we take a tree down, we should be able to grind the stumps. And we can get other attachments for it, like augers and things of that nature. It's a pretty versatile piece of equipment. Another annual request, $15,000 for fence repair and vegetation removal at the cemeteries. That yellow box in that vegetation is actually a headstone in there. We are slowly addressing some of these overgrowth issues. Again, fence repair when trees come down. Some of the stuff we can do in-house, some of it we have to help contract out just because it's a time issue or a level of skill issue. So $15,000 is requested there. Another annual request, $10,000 for emergency road repairs. This is just one of the flooding events we've had this fall. This is Cockle Cove Beach, where we had pavement undermined. This just allows us to buy materials that weren't foreseen as part of a normal maintenance plan, just during emergency situations. $20,000 annual request for road maintenance, whether it's crack sealing or potholes or simply line striping. We have guidelines that we need to follow for retroreflectivity of line striping. There are standards out there that we have to comply with. So we line stripe all of town in like a 4 to 5 year cycle. So that takes care of making those road markings visible and safe and pedestrian markings. And this money goes towards that. We have a request for a $175,000 to replace a John Deere tractor mower. This tractor mower has been out of service for the past 6 months. It's used to trim roadside vegetation. It had some issues with the AC line. We had an employee that was exposed to the AC refrigerant. It was kind of a critical issue for us. It was repaired, I think 3 separate times. Wound up, the AC lines were completely rotted just because of the age of the tractor. You know, we're seeing more and more types of breakdowns like this when the equipment gets old. So we would like to, in addition to repairing the existing tractor, we'd like to buy a new one. And then when there's a major critical breakdown in this, then we send it out to auction and we'll still at least have a backup. There's a backlog right now of some of the roadside mowing we need to do. So I'd really like to keep 2 of them operating for, a little while anyway. Another annual request, $30,000 to install and repair catch basins. This is a picture of a catch basin that we installed just a month ago or so. Increased rainfall amounts creates more flooding events, and these are not a lifelong event. The concrete lasts 50 years, but you have to replace the stone, and you have to replace all the other aspects of this to keep them functioning properly. We do clean them, but they still, over time, they silt in and they stop performing the way they should. Sidewalk construction, $100,000 annual request for sidewalk maintenance and construction. As we continue to do sidewalk work around town, this money goes towards that. This is an example on Crowell Road. That sidewalk was not part of the sewer project, so we were able to add that while the contractor was on site, and we were able to add some ADA compliant crossing markings as part of that project.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Yeah, I'd like to see, do you need more than 100,000? I mean, we have a lot of work to do, I think, in town on sidewalks. We've met with some resistance on certain roads, but like the sidewalk on Old Queen Anne's wonderful. That's a phenomenal sidewalk. This is a great sidewalk. I'm a fan of sidewalks. Really rue the sidewalks on Route 28. I know it's a state road. I've heard it many times, but they're really in abysmal shape. They're awful. They're overgrown. There's roots. You can barely navigate them. I know it's not our responsibility, but I would just, I'm a sidewalk fan, and we're a walking town.
It is, unfortunately, the sidewalks on 28 are our responsibility. Based on an agreement from the 1970s, we're to maintain them. And the problem lies with, if we do anything within the state right-of-way, we have to go through the full design and submittal process. So it's a much larger type of project than just, hiring a contractor and building something with our own town road layout, So it's a much longer process for us to get through.
But if we wanted to do something, Rob, if I understand you correctly, we could.
We could. We have to get a permit with Mass DOT, submit 75% plans, have it designed and stamped by an engineer.
Yep.
Go through the whole
Yep.
thing.
We're very familiar with it.
$100,000 wouldn't even touch the design alone,
Yeah. Well, anyway, keep up the good work.
I'm going to throw a question out there I'm probably going to regret throwing out there, but bear with me. Because you're talking about ADA accessibilities, compliance, understanding if we wanted to do a small little project, the oversight and package and red tape is much broader to deal with. My question is, I know there's several crosswalks in town that start at a sidewalk, cross over to nothing. They've been there forever. I mean, we have a couple of them in town, at least on 28. Is that ever going to become a bigger issue that we need to, they've been there for as long as I've lived in this town. I mean, they're there. But is that something we need to keep in the back of our mind?
I guess the question goes back to who installed them in the first place. Was it Mass DOT issue or was it a town issue?
I don't know. You have to look at each site and probably do some homework.
I know there's one on Main Street that crosses over to nothing, but there is an opening to a trailway that was an old right-of-way to Clint Hanman's Blueberry Bogs, and that's like a gap so there's reasons for some of them, I think, but I just don't know why.
The one I see mostly is the one just past Ridgevale Road across from the Pottery Place, that there's a bus stop or gathering, but I know that used to be a motel years ago. There used to be a restaurant across the street, so things have changed, evolved over the years, so maybe at one point it was more usable, but
If
just
they were
as-
installed
more by
pre,
pure curiosity.
if they were installed pre-1991, that's when the Federal Register, initiated the ADA compliance. So that could be, they pre-existed.
I am certain they were pre-1991. All right.
Road surfacing, $200,000 annual request. This goes in conjunction with Chapter 90 grants from the state. There's kind of a economy of scale. If we can add the $200,000 to what we already get from Massachusetts, we can put more pavement down at a lower cost per ton. So I think this really helps. It's kind of like the best bang for your buck, in my opinion, for showing taxpayers what we are capable of as far as road maintenance goes anyway. And so that concludes the capital articles. Now we're into the warrant articles. So I'll just very briefly go through these, and I appreciate your patience while we do this. The transfer station ballot question, I think we're all very familiar with that. We were about $2 million shy on our bidding, and we're just asking to replace that money so we can go out to bid for the Phase 1 project. Is some kind of a breakdown of the dollars.
Can you just go back, Rob? Phase 2, which is the building that we're doing first.
Correct.
Priority 1. How, if I recall correctly, the new building is going to be, how big?
About 3,500 square feet.
3,500, and that building is?
That's the proposed building.
Oh, that is the proposed,
That
and
is.
how big is the existing building?
If you can see like that dark gray shade area, towards the top, there's like a smaller triangle. It's a little less than half that size. So I would estimate maybe 1,500 square feet or so.
Okay, thank you.
So we would go back and see if, revisit the design to make sure it's appropriate. And we'd probably have to inflate the $2 million just because we bid it in November, and now after town meeting, we may add some inflationary piece just to cover ourselves. $250,000 for sewer expansion engineering. So we have three sewer construction contracts that have just gone out and have been awarded. We have 2 others that are nearing completion that'll be finished this summer. Engineering design costs are not SRF eligible, only engineering oversight during construction. So this would help us further to the designs for the next phase of construction. Sewer capital, this 1.735 million would come out of the wastewater stabilization fund. I'll get into a little bit more detail with each of these. Lining, $1 million for lining 8-inch AC sewer main. This was done on Main Street last summer. For the lengths of pipe that we can line, we will. I think it's money well spent. For example, when the sinkhole in front of the Squire opened up, we had to go in 2 or 3 times to repair that. It was down 15 feet deep. Cost about $100,000 to replace 20 feet of pipe and some chimneys and some access. We were able to line that same length, 300 feet in that same area, for about $50,000. So lining is a much more cost-effective way to get the sewer, build its life another 50 years. But there are some restrictions. We can't always get, 8-inch may be too restrictive based on the flows. Or it may only be temporary because in 5 or 10 years we'll come in and we'll replace it with a 10-inch or a 12-inch line. So we really have to look at what's the most suitable practice for this. But this is really a very cost-effective way to do like a non-invasive repair of the sewer main. We went manhole to manhole. We did it at night. It didn't really impact anybody. It was very minimal. And we could do that to manholes as well. $265,000 to rehabilitate the septage building lakeside. So this is the area at the WPCF where all the town's sewage comes in through force mains. It comes into this tank. This is the first line of defense before it gets treated. Removes grit and grease. There's an auger in the bottom of this tank and a chain. The chain is broken. It's got baffles in the bottom that collect grease. They're not operating as they should. Our staff has to get up on top of there once a week with high-pressure hoses and clean it out. And you see that yellow circle on there? Those are holes just from corrosion. It's a galvanized tank, but we need to get in there and do some more permanent repairs. So this is really a maintenance assessment and somebody to come out and perform those repairs for us. $175,000 for original sewer system repairs. You know, the sewer system on Main Street downtown is the oldest section we have in town. That AC pipe, as we know, is starting to fail. Other than lining, we would be able to do kind of build a program where we can start replacing some of that as needed before it becomes a critical issue. $300,000 to upgrade the core server and network infrastructure at the Water Pollution Control Facility. This is working with IT to make sure that we can get the computer and the servers up to date with the right hardware and software. Currently, I think the normal time frame is every 5 years. I think the computers that are there now are at least 7 years old, and they're showing their age. If you have any more questions, I'll direct you to the IT director because I don't speak this language sometimes, so I apologize. And this is my last slide. Transfer station roll-off truck, $361,700. It's a 2008 Mack. It has 325,000 miles on it. This roll-off truck, in conjunction with the other roll-off truck, takes 9 to 12 trips per week during the summer and 3 to 6 trips per week in the off-season to remove all the recyclable materials out of Chatham. By contrast, the other roll-off truck is only 3 years old and it has 140,000 miles on it already. And that's primarily due to the Mack seeing a lot of breakdowns. So it's not operating a lot, and the Peterbilt, which is the other truck, picks up the slack. So it would be nice to get a more reliable truck so we can kind of even out the operations of both of those trucks instead of relying on one or the other. And I appreciate your time and answer any questions if you have any.
Jeff?
Just a quick one, Rob and Jill. The catch basin issue that they're having, you know, when we have flooding, and we're going to, I think, probably make a prediction that we're going to have a continued flooding down in the Little Beach, Morris Island Road area. Do we have enough? There's $30,000 for catch basins, if you will, but what do we do when we have to do more than that? Where are we going to go for funds? Because I don't believe 30,000 is going to fix that area and it's going to be ongoing. So I think we need to really think long and hard about how we buttress the town, if you will, from a road and catch basin and flooding situations. And I'm not sure this budget reflects those eventualities, because I think at some point we're going to have to deal with the flooding. And it's people will get stranded, and it wasn't pretty. We have the Vector truck and stuff, but if the catch basins aren't working hard and long enough, and sea level's rising, and it's going to be all sorts of stuff. So $30,000 for catch basins, I get it, but I can guarantee you we're going to go over budget because we've got issues, especially in the low-lying areas in town.
Right, in the low-lying areas, I'm not sure a catch basin would be the solution.
I don't know what the answer is, but it's going to be more than what we've got reflected in this budget. Just my thoughts, and I'm not an engineer, but just kind of from a practical perspective.
Yeah, we have the low-lying roads meeting coming up, and I know that our natural resources director, I think he just departed, this is something that he's working with our designers to really map it out. But you're right, when it does happen, I mean, you have your state aid, your Chapter 90 funds, we have what we're trying to build up for our road construction funds. But I think this is the one pressing thing that really keeps me up at night of what are we going to do? So it's definitely on our radar.
I think the thoughts about building a reserve of some sort, again, I'm shooting from the hip a bit, but some sort of financial facility so that we can deal with what we know is going to be coming.
Okay. Mike?
Is now a good time for me to ask the question or invite you to comment or Terry to comment on Mr. Lear's inquiries?
Yeah, I think it would probably be more appropriate for Terry to respond to that. But correct me if I'm
All
wrong,
good.
Terry.
Yes, I can respond to the question now, or if you want me to run through quickly, that'll be part of what I'm going to touch upon. And Rob, just make sure that's closed out. So I'll just run through a couple of quick slides, but I will touch on those questions and concerns. So again, for the public, Terry Whalen, Principal Projects and Operations Administrator. And we'll hit a couple of the questions that have been posed, and then just building off the slide that Rob presented about the one change in the budget, basically a separating of the budget to align or to be reconciled with, excuse me, alignment changes in the department structure. So essentially moving the project administration cost from the municipal building costs, now that we have a new line of reporting, that basically the day-to-day operations for the facilities reporting. We've got the through the facilities foreman to the deputy director on to the director. So again, it's just a separating of the functions into two. Well, 192 already exists, and then adding 190. So essentially, it's just moving the costs for the three personnel we have in principal projects and operations, myself, the assistant, and then the GIS planner. So those salaries and items are included in there, as well as some basic departmental operational functions that fees for meetings and advertisement, those types of things. But the bulk of the budget stays in 192 for things like services, building repairs, those types of things. And then just quick, so with, again, with the realignment, giving us more time in principal projects with the day-to-day operations being pulled out. So primarily these four areas are where we're focusing our activities on capital and special projects. Those might come from articles, grants, or assigned by the town manager. We do provide support to some committees, so typical liaison duties, compliance, and administrative functions. Operational support to facilities, so when there are things that are kind of out of the norm or require some additional coordination or historical research or integration in how certain changes or items need to be looked at in the context of upcoming projects, planned projects, ongoing projects, those types of things. And the geographic information system is also part of our department. So, and again, just some of that I know through the past few years, different articles, but again, we have these are probably the more major projects we have going on right now. So a couple at the library, we've got a CPA project over at Marconi, the ADA transition plan implementation project, so we have that going on, and the 193 Stony Hill Road facility study. Yep.
When do you think the last one is likely to be completed? When will
Yeah,
we get
so
a
in our
report?
last discussion, we were hoping to have some draft findings, hopefully by the end of February. So looking to, I do need to confirm that with the architect, the team that they have together. They have done some preliminary site visits. They were reaching out to maybe bring a vendor or two out to also review some of the conditions on the site, and then come up with, as we put in the scope, basically a prioritization as well, and kind of an order of magnitude costs of things, based on their findings for, where we might go with, making changes at the building to make it more serviceable. And again, just committee support. So again, we do spend some time in the division on supporting the various committees, the Airport Commission, the Energy and Climate Action Committee, and Railroad Museum Working Group. So again, directly, we're supporting those boards, committees, and group with different aspects of running public meetings, integrating their requests into the town budget process or the article process. And some of them have grants that we both seek and maintain compliance, and obviously, just like all boards and committees, open meeting law compliance and public records requests. And so from our operation functions, we're focused mostly on the facilities planning and support and implementation of different aspects of projects, energy management and planning projects. So items involved with either our initiatives with the Cape Light Compact, with Cape and Vineyard Electric Collaborative, CVEC, our green community initiatives. So those are all things that are run or managed out of principal projects. The property agreement activities here too. So we, are a landlord in a sense to a couple of different entities at Marconi. Some without agreements, technical agreements, but the library is sort of a tenant. We also have people using Scout Hall, the Bassett House. Again, different kind of requests sometimes with facilities or responses to items or different things they're looking to do. And then the final thing here is across from our operational function is we are very involved with the work order system, and we're in the process of updating that. I think we might have reported a meeting or two ago when I say when we were funding the work order system for primarily just for facilities. So it basically someone can be sitting at their desk and the door is broken, it gets submitted, the facilities crew goes out and fixes it, marks it complete, and there's some automatic notifications that go on. We're actually expanding that to include the broader range of divisions across DPW so that various requests can come in for all of those entities, just for better tracking, assignment of duties, and then looking further out, we'll have the ability to also track better invoices and different types of activities with those work orders, and even time and other resources that you might expend on projects, so that we can better have more data readily available for budget planning. And then what's interesting too now is with the newer platforms, with our GIS, this is also going to be a great opportunity for us to integrate that into the work order system. So that will add the geographical component to that very easily. And then we're also going to take this opportunity to revamp the GIS portion of the website so that we are improve the viewer and the whole mapping portal, what we're looking to develop so that we have a combination of static maps as well that are often requested and used for various municipal planning purposes or public inquiries. So that we're going to integrate those two efforts as part of that effort. And then again, I mentioned some of these grants already. So again, with the various committees or different town commitments. So again, a lot of them with the energy, the top three, and then the other two with the airport, primarily with compliance, and capital planning, et cetera. And then I'm going to transition, unless you have any questions on the operations, but I'll go right into the two proposed capital requests. The first one being the ADA transition plan implementation at $200,000 and facilities capital at $200,000. So for the so this I'll elucidate on our process here for the ADA transition plan. As you heard earlier from the chair of the committee, over the years there was a ADA transition plan developed for the community, which essentially was a survey of all town buildings, facilities. Again, there were hundreds of items to be addressed from structures to buildings. So as part of that process to get this, and again, I know this board, the select board did approve this, I believe, around February, in 2022, with some of the capacity issues that was mentioned previously by the previous speaker. We took a different approach. We were trying to do this in-house. It was not moving along, so we came up with an approach to implement all the recommendations in the plan. So we submitted a capital article for last year to start the process off for all the baseline work, quite frankly, to get the plan moving along. So again, if you remember those, there were a lot of matrices and charts and photos and action items in there. So we have a team in place that we're working on to that's, has gone through every single action item. They've categorized them into 3 primary categories, so that work has happened. We also have and those 3 categories include, excuse me, kind of low-hanging fruit, so things like signage, different types of maintenance actions, items requiring design. And when I'm talking about design, I'm really talking about design for items or changes that will trigger building permits. So they're basically permit level plans, that type of thing. And then our third category are items that are either bigger, more encompassing, or might be related to other future projects or things that we're contemplating. So that make sure that those are coordinated. And prime example might be the now Center for Active Living. So some of the deficiencies that were noted in that plan, we're talking with the team we have in place, reviewing some of the items in that other study. So those are the kind of things, so those are the kind of 3 primary areas that the going through with the consultant and developing an approach on how to make these things happen. So they've done some site visits. We have been doing signage kind of falls into that low-hanging fruit, although it's kind of complicated because of the variability in all the buildings. So we also have a sign shop and a consultant going on to make sure that all the materials are consistent, everything fully complies with all the ADA recommendations. So that's moving forward. We also have meetings scheduled with the consultant to work with our facilities staff. So again, it's going to be integrated with facilities staff as well for items that were identified that might be more in that management realm of, for instance, the tension on doors to make sure there's certain tolerances there for those openings. So we're going to go, they're going to work through that with the project team. We'll be doing that with the facility staff, and then also identifying, again, things that they can do in-house that don't trigger permits. So again, I know that there's frustration on how long this takes to get into place, but we do need to do this in a coordinated fashion, and we do need to do certain aspects do need to comply with building permits and those types of things. So that's this first year is really the foundation of this 5-year plan. So, and again, if you recollect our last year request, we had the baseline request, and then we had it programmed out for 5 years. I don't know if that answers enough for your question, or and then again, just the importance of this project because of the your recent goals and objectives there. I just put language from your where this really fits into meeting that 5th goal you had.
So, frankly, I was confused last year as to whether it was $250,000 a year or $200,000 a year. And I heard different things from different people. Tonight, it seems that Mr. Lear thought it was 250. So let me just put that as one question. Has there been a reduction? That's one question. Question number 2 is, if we spent money last year, what did we spend it on? And 3, recognizing that you've given us a whole menu of a bunch of different things that you're working on, just in big picture terms, can you give us a sense of where you're gonna spend the $200,000 this year, fiscal '25? And I mean, when you talk about planning, that, to me, that means consultants and things that people can't see. Is there anything in that 200 that people might be able to see by the time we get to June of '26 or whenever it is?
Sure, and then maybe I'll get go back to the broader question. So we did have this, in the plan for 250,000 over 5 years. So there was a proposed reduction here. The finance director and I will talk, there might be some options to gain some capacity back here in the short run. And then we also did apply for, unfortunately, we did not get a grant from the State Office of Massachusetts Office of Disability, which is MOD. So we just got notice of that this week, that was not funded. But the plan was programmed to be, $1.25 million over 5 years. So, and then I think I'm getting the second, I didn't bring my pen, but the second question, what kind of actions will you see in the short run? We'll see the signage being implemented. We'll see the internal corrections being made. So basically kind of check marks on all those matrices. So there'll be actions taken. There will be the prioritization that we mentioned in the first go-around on some of the public restroom issues that were identified. So we're going to do that. And then also the town offices. So as we get those programs and we can implement those things, we're going to be doing that. So that's still in the FY24. So we're moving forward, and then basically the additional work for the consultant right now too is giving us that program, so what we can fit into the funding over the next, so what might be the FY25 projects, FY26, et cetera. But in the short run, there will be some of the, the low-hanging fruit. Again, there'll probably be a lot of check marks, but, again, those will be smaller magnitude items than the more complicated ones to kind of check off. But
Okay, so just one follow-up on that. Are we still doing a 5-year, $1.25 million plan, or are we saving $50,000 this year, but somehow it's going to come back in future years? How does that play out? Because I think, my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I thought we actually, if we didn't talk about it, we actually maybe, something went to town meeting last year that had 1.25 in it. But correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, well, the capital plan for the out years did have 20, again, you had the current year request for 250, and then there were four out year requests for 250K for each of those years.
Yeah, so we are committed to that. It's just that we don't have free cash certified at this point. So as you saw, or maybe you didn't see, the request that Terry did put forward was for $250,000, as Carrie and I were trying to balance it out. And this seems so long ago, but like the first week of January. And we were hoping that the grant would come through too, to augment it. So that's something we'll definitely look back at to see if we can increase it back to the commitment that I know the board would want to have.
Right, and since this is a capital allocation, there might be some ways to achieve a couple of things for this fiscal year that basically will give us the effective capacity of 250 for next year. So more to come on that.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think to be responsive to Bob Lear's statement and what he read this evening, I think by year end, we should have an update on where we are with respect to what was planned for this year, and also what the plan is going forward for the following year and maybe beyond, because this is a multi-year deal here. The consultant ought to be able to schedule this out, and we ought to be able to know how we're spending that $250K by the end of this year and then for the years there. And, it may change, but I think it's reasonable, and he very reasonably requested, what's the plan, what's the deal, what are we doing? And I think doing our job, we should do the same. So I think the expectation by year end, Jill, was really we ought to have a schedule, and Terry, of what we've done this year and what's planned for next, and how much we're spending on what. And that's reasonable. It should be a Gantt chart, it should be a project plan that's planned out and should be presented. So that's all, thanks.
Yeah, and just if I can add, so what we've added as well, so in your December monthly report, if you notice, so we do have, that is a bullet point in the, and we'll be going forward, and we worked out a way. So again, with the timing and some of the things, so we're committing to getting updates to the committee at the very beginning of the month, and then, if anything changes between the lag time to get to your monthly report, we'll update that information. So again, we're going to have that information, and there will be on a regular basis. And
Thanks,
again,
Terry.
we started that in December, so.
Thank you.
We'll, again, continue to do that moving forward here. Oh, and I did have one more, sorry. I'm sorry if you had any more questions, because I know that is a priority of the board.
And this is going to sound like a softball, but as I looked at all those projects you're working on, are you adequately staffed to deal with all of that? I mean, you got a whole bunch of things going on.
And again, that's, so one of the prime reasons we're taking this approach here is because, again, as was outlined, the capacity, whether this started with, liaison activities for direct to the committee, trying to do this when this came, after we were coming out of COVID and all other projects going on. That's why we needed to do this approach, to do this. But as you see, even, consultants are, or project teams are not magic. You need to manage them. You need to give them a good scope to get a good project. So but again, I think we have the capacity, and what's been really helpful for the principal projects, when we were talking earlier about this, the realignment and the new staff, we've had a full year now of 3 facility staff, with the deputy director as well, and then obviously Rob. Taking those day-to-day activities away from principal projects has helped us to focus on these a little more. So we're just hoping that's going to continue. So that's been a big change from previous years. So that's moving forward. I think we'll be able to focus on those bullet points more effectively, more quickly. Moving forward, and I think that's maybe a perfect segue too for this next slide here. So so as we're still under the DPW umbrella, this other is a standing annual request for larger cost items, repair, replacement, equipment, and projects. So those are ones again that with the relationships we have with the facilities department, if there are things that might be on the order of 5 plus 10,000, things that come up over the normal course of actions from preventative maintenance or unexpected failures. The principal projects, will review that with either the deputy or the facilities foreman to see if there are other funding avenues, grants, different types of things, or we need to go to this capital account. So this has been, I think this is about the 3rd fiscal year in a row that we've kept this level to at 200,000, and that seems to be adequate. So, but that's still our relationship in the process with the facilities. So.
All right. Questions, comments? Done? Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next
So
item,
close this out.
there are some warrant,
Okay.
potential warrant items that we could act upon tonight if we so choose. Any thoughts? Dean?
Mr. Chairman, I think we should take these votes as have been recommended on the budget first. So I'll offer a motion. I'll make it a consolidated motion. It's on page 4 of the memo from the finance director. First, to place the transfer station roll-off truck in the amount of $361,700 on the warrant. I guess we have to take these separately.
Separately, yes.
We do.
So let me take them
Second.
Let me take them one by one. That's the first motion.
They're separate articles, Team.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion to place. We had a second,
Second.
correct? Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dyken.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
And the next motion is to recommend to town meeting the transfer station roll-off truck in the amount of $361,700.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Next motion is to place the sewer request for lining of 8-inch AC force main pipe in the amount of $1 million, $170,000 for original sewer collection system repairs, $265,000 for rehab of septic building lakeside, and $300,000 for water pollution control facility electronic systems upgrade in the amount of $1,735,000 on the warrant.
And a second.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
And the last in this area is to vote to recommend, I move to recommend the sewer request for lining of 8-inch AC force main pipe in the amount of $1 million, $170,000 for original sewer collection system repairs, $265,000 for rehab of septic building lakeside, and $300,000 for water pollution control facility electronic systems upgrade in the amount of $1,735,000.
Second.
Second. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Great,
So
thank you.
Good.
Is that article that's listed separately, those are just for our information, right? You've got two articles, there's a capital transfer, that was what we just voted.
That's what we just did.
That's what we just did.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the FY 2025 water operating budget and water capital articles, I believe.
Carrie, do you need to do an introduction for this?
Rob already did his presentation on the water department. I just did a separate page for the water department if you wanted to see it separately.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
Questions or comments? Jean?
It looks like there are four motions to
Yeah,
recommend.
I was just following what was done last year.
So I'll move we place the water operating budget in the amount of $4,399,250 on the warrant.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend the water operating budget in the amount of $4,399,250.
Second.
Second, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move we vote to place the water capital water mains in the amount of $500,000 on the warrant.
Second.
Second, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye. Oops, sorry.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend the water capital water mains in the amount of $500,000.
Second.
All right, further discussion? Select Board Member Castro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, thank you for those presentations. Update on town manager recommendation, any needed?
No, not at this time.
Not at this time, okay, perfect. And last item on the agenda, item C, consider policy regarding display of flags on town property. Shauna, good evening.
Good evening, Shauna Neely, your communications manager. Before the board tonight is a draft policy for flying flags on town-owned property. It is prompted by the fairly recent Supreme Court decision of Shurtleff versus the City of Boston, which very briefly, for those who don't follow Supreme Court decisions, the City of Boston was sued. They had a past practice of allowing private organizations or entities outside of city government to fly flags on city-owned flagpoles. They were approached by a pro-life group with a request to fly that flag. They declined that request and were sued and the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. The court decided that the city had, by its past practice of allowing organizations with, private organizations to fly flags, they had created a public forum. And basically, within the public forum, First Amendment rights were protected. So while the town has never entertained requests from organizations outside of outside organizations to fly flags on town-owned property, town council has advised that it would be prudent to codify that past practice within a policy, and reflect the recent decision with language dictating that we have not, and nor have we ever intended to create a public forum through the use of flying flags on our poles, and that it is reserved for government speech only.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Questions or comments from the board? Mike?
Do I understand that the one change here is that we no longer will be flying the flag at half-staff for various Chatham officials and so forth?
Correct.
Who've passed away?
Correct.
And
That was a
that-
policy adopted in the late 80s. The town, I don't believe, actually has the right to do that under the U.S. Flag Code, but it was a board policy and was practiced in the past.
And that's sort of part of what is being recommended in order to maintain the flag as government speech only?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other hand? Dean?
Does town council want us to take a separate vote formally rescinding the 1989 policy?
The adoption of the new policy does include that it would supersede and repeal all other.
So I had a couple of questions. I fully support this because we've seen other communities get into trouble because they were allowing certain flags. It's better to have a policy across the board, nothing but the flags that are called for here. So in paragraph 3, on page 2, under 4, it says no flags no less than 3 by 5 and no greater than 4.5 by 9. I think a typical flag in the second category is as much as 5 feet by, I know I have 5 by 8s that I can fly.
It's possible. I can double check with DPW what size our outdoor flags are,
okay.
and we can amend that.
Then under ceremonial flags, the first paragraph says governments or communities. I wonder if the word communities is too vague. You might check with town council. Is it, does he mean other government entities, other municipalities? Because a community can be anything outside of a legal
I can
governmental
certainly
entity.
pose that question. It was town council that drafted
Yeah.
it, so.
And then under number 3, flags of professional or amateur sports teams, does the word amateur include school?
Yes. This policy was based on one that was drafted for Foxborough.
Okay.
Town council did inquire whether we wanted to remove that one. I didn't think it would do any harm in case maybe the A's
Yes.
won championship, or if Monomoy schools went to a finals,
Yes,
that we can
I just
certainly.
wondered whether the word amateur was broad enough to.
Yes, it does include schools.
To note on that, I mean, the Monomoy School Sports Program did fairly well this past fall, and they put flags on the building, not on a flagpole,
Not on a
in
flagpole.
recognition of those achievements. So there was, so I think that is,
I just wanted to make sure it was possible so that if there is success like that in the future, we could put it on our flagpoles. I'm fully supportive of this.
all right,
Thank you.
additional.
I just want to make
Yeah.
clear, and I support it as well, but flags shall only be displayed by the town as an expression of the town's official sentiments as authorized by vote of the select board. So if we wanted to fly a flag, we have to authorize it's being flyed.
Correct.
Okay, so if the Pats suddenly win the Super Bowl,
Correct.
we take a vote here and say, we'd like to raise the, I know it's far.
It may not be on the board, but.
It may not be it'd be far-fetched at that point. It's, or the Red Sox, or Monomoy. It's all the same, right? Okay, thanks. I just we have some say here is what I'm asking.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, unless there's any additional comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion. All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Thank you.
I'll entertain one final.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? No seconds?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.